Welcome, everyone, to today's Ceros Educate Showcase webinar, Getting Inspired for Your Next Interactive Ceros Project. In today's session, we are going to be taking a look at 5 different amazing experiences that I think really push the boundaries of what can be created with the Ceros Studio. All of these experiences that you're going to see today have one thing in common. Well, probably several, but the one thing that we're going to focus on today is that they all utilize what we call object states. So, if you're unfamiliar with what object states, hang in there. We'll get to that in just a moment. But you can use object states to create really cool, amazing, and immersive transformations in your design. So, that's really what we're going to be focused on today, providing you with inspiration through experiences that all utilize object states. My name is Travis. I am the digital content educator on the Ceros Educate team. I will be your host for today. I've been with the organization for a little over 3 years now. Time sure does fly. I mean, in those 3 years, I've led many client trainings. I've also led several webinars. If you've been a part of our Educate community for a while, you've probably seen me around. So, welcome back if you're one of those people. We're glad to have you here. And I'm very excited to showcase the true awesome power of Ceros today. So, since again, all these experiences are going to have a focus on utilizing object states, I think it's important that we just take a brief moment to explain what the heck those are and how you could potentially utilize them to make really cool transformations in your designs. Then we'll jump into what you're all here to see, our amazing showcase. But this is kind of a special showcase, y'all. Not only am I going to be showing you these experiences, but I'm also going to be taking a peek under the hood with a number of them in studio to show you how the interactions and object states are set up. So if anything pops up today that you're like, oh, that looks really cool, or maybe I should try out object states in my experience, I highly recommend it. And if you're curious about how something was achieved or just have a general question about object states, feel free to drop those in the chat or the Q&A box, and I'll make sure we have some time at the end of our presentation to go and address any of those questions. All right, everybody, I hope you're ready to get inspired. But first, let's talk about what the heck are object states. And object states allow you to assign various states or transformations, if you prefer, to an asset on the canvas. You can determine how you'd like the asset to look by default, so initially to your viewer, but then change its appearance or position when interacted with. To give you an example, if you want a button to change colors when a user is hovering over it, you'll want to give that button a hover state. And below, we have a few examples of the many different types of transformations you can utilize with object states. So you can change objects' colors, their size, you can shrink them or expand them. You could also change the position of your assets, the rotation, and in the case of image files, you can change various different image effects. I think one of the most common ones is the example I have here on the right, where you take an image from being completely desaturated in grayscale to fully saturated when you hover over it. That is a function of object states. But you could also adjust things like the contrast. You could invert the image. I saw that recently in a guided design course experience that came through from one of our submissions. Lots of really cool image effects you can apply to image files in an experience. Now, if any of this stuff looks interesting to you, you can learn more about object states over on Educate. And I've actually linked out a resource that kind of overviews object states here. And we'll also be sharing this deck to everyone that came out today and registered for the webinar if you want to check out any of the experiences in the showcase or this resource right here. So again, this one right here is just an overview on object states. I actually ripped this first paragraph for my slide that you just saw, but it goes over what they can do and how to set them up in an experience. So if these interest you, I hope they do. Definitely take a look at some of our content related object states on Educate. Okay, everybody, but now it is time to showcase the experiences that you're all here to see and check out some interactive magic. And we're going to kick our showcase off with an experience known as the Hot 10. And not only was I drawn to this one because it reminds me of Hot Ones, which is one of my favorite YouTube shows, but also in the way it is a product page and a kind of infographic that really has a strong emphasis on object states. Heck yeah, we love hot ones, Gene. Yeah, this is a great experience. So this one comes from Ceros Inspire. So it was internally created. So at any time, you can view this on Ceros Inspire and kind of play around with it or interact with it more than what I'm going to show you today. So let's check this out, shall we? So right off the bat, really great animations to bring all of these different layers into view. But the really fun magic happens once you start to interact with each one of these bottles here down below. So if I were to hover over this El Yucateca bottle here on the left, that's a great hot sauce, by the way. A couple things happen. The other hot sauces that I'm not currently hovering over kind of shift down the page a little bit. They kind of shrink a little bit. The brightness also lowers on them. That way, the hot sauce that you're hovering over, that you're interacting with, becomes the focal point of your interaction. So you're really drawn into which specific product you're interacting with, making it more engaging and immersive. But that's not all that's happening here. When we hover over each one of these hot sauce bottles, those magma rocks behind drop their brightness a little bit. And that kind of magma-y swirly layer behind it, that GIF, also turns up its brightness. So really cool transformations right out of the gate. And that's the case for each one of these bottles. I've actually had the pleasure of trying a number of these myself. Sacred Aardvark, fantastic. Pain 100, terrible. Queen's Majesty, pretty good. I haven't tried the rest of them. And I obviously tried the El Yucateco one, but can't recommend the other ones quite yet because I haven't had a chance to sample them all. But other stuff happens when you start to click on each one of these hot sauce bottles. A nice pop-up appears with some nice animations that gives more of a description of each one of these hot sauces. It also gives their Scoville rating for how hot they are. But then there's even more object states to check out here. If you click on the See the Breakdown button on each one of these pop-ups, you'll be presented with a really nifty infographic that has 3 buttons here at the bottom so that you can see how each one of these hot sauces rank on a heat, sweet, and flavor scale. So check this out, y'all. When I hover over the heat button, for example, all of those hot sauces will change their position based on how hot they are on this scale. And those little square shapes beneath them, that data, they also shrink or expand, depending on how hot or sweet or flavorful each one of these hot sauces are. And that is all done with object states, everybody. So really what we're doing here is we're creating 3 states for each one of those objects that you see on screen that are triggered with these different buttons. How cool is that? And we've seen this to a kind of lesser extent in some other data viz examples that we have. If you've come out to an advanced training done by my Educate team, you might have seen our interactive bar chart template experience where it has data that will change based on the year that you're hovering on. Those are all done with object state. So it's pretty much the same principle here, only we're working with a lot more data and a lot more products. All right, let's take a peek under the hood, shall we? So I'm going to open this up in Studio now, and we're just going to quickly examine. I know I kind of mostly explained the interactivity there, but we're just going to take a moment to examine each one of the interactions here. So each one of these different hot sauces has a hotspot that's laid on top of it, and applied to each hotspot, there are a number of different things going on. It opens up a corresponding pop-up on click. So in this case, the first hot sauce in our lineup here will open up pop-up 1. And then there are a number of other object state interactions applied to this hotspot. One to change the shadow and the position of this hot sauce that you're hovering on right here, like so. So it gets shifted up a little bit, right? The next one will have us target all of the other hot sauces that you're not currently interacting with. So in this case, sauce 2 through 10, we're taking that to a second state, which kind of bumps them down and also kind of dims their brightness a little bit so that the hot sauce you're interacting with is, again, the focal point. And then finally, we have an object state applied to our background layers. So the magma rocks and this kind of lava GIF, if you will, which lowers the brightness on the magma rocks and increases the brightness on that magma layer. And this is the case for each one of these hot sauces. The same thing is pretty much being done on each one of those hot spots. Pretty cool, right? So again, great example of a unique product page, really cool data viz woven in here as well. I love this experience. Again, not just because I'm a Hot Ones fan. I do think this is a great implementation of object states. But let's keep moving on. I would love to spend all day really finally breaking all these down, but we got a couple more experiences to look at. So next up, we've got an arcade game. And this one is probably the least applicable to kind of general use cases that we see with experiences that are designed in Ceros. But I thought this was a cool way to show off how you could potentially get really creative and make some fun, unique stuff that might not be super typical of a designer that's working in Ceros. So this is a game experience that's also available on Ceros Inspire. So this one was also created internally. And it's fun. It's really silly, but if you hover over the steering wheel here, you can move the car around. Look at that. So we've got object states applied to that steering wheel to change its rotation. And then we're also changing the position of the car. There's also some GIFs going on here too. And I think this is a great example of marrying assets that you create outside of Studio and really amplifying the animation and transformations with object states in Studio. So if you're already really good at making motion graphics or other like assets outside of Ceros, bringing them into the platform, you can really level them up with something like this. So here there are basically three states in play for our car. We've got one there that moves it to the left side of the screen. When you hover on the steering wheel on the left side, it's got its neutral position, which is the default state, and then its right position on this side. And there's two other object states in play here. These buttons here on the right will boost your car. So we can send it off into the distance. And there's also a pretty cool day and night filter that you can switch between. I love this kind of vaporwave retro style background they got going on here, but these can be toggled on and off with these buttons right here. And there's also some subtle object states happening on each one of the buttons. We're changing the color of them on hover. So really three different major object state transformations here. One to change the day and night filter, one to change the movement of the car, and then one to boost it off into the sunset. Let me show you how this looks in Studio now so you can get a better idea of how this was achieved. And it might surprise you how few object states there actually are in play. There's really only a couple here to achieve this cool effect. A lot of the animations that you see here are driven by GIFs, but again, we're enhancing these GIFs with object states to really make it come to life and feel even more immersive. So on my car layer right here on this group, we have a few different states. We have our default state, where it's just centered up in the middle of our track there. We've got state one, which will position it to the right, which is activated with that hotspot over top of the right side of our steering wheel. I'll show you that in a moment. We've got state two, where it's over to the left, and then state three, where you can't even see it. It's way off into the distance. We shrink it way off the track to give the illusion that it's boosting out of view. So really only, I guess, technically four states here, our default state, and then three states to change the position, or two states to change the position and one to kind of zoom it off into the distance. And that was done by shrinking down the object and then repositioning it off the canvas. And for stuff like this, where you're changing the position of an asset like this car here, to achieve something like that, this is driven by transitions in Studio. So this is kind of serving as, I guess you could call it like an animation, really, but it's taking our object state from default to whatever states you apply here and moving them in a smooth transition. So that's kind of what's driving the kind of animated look of these different effects. And those can all be changed too. So in this case, it takes 1.5 seconds for our car to boost off the screen in state three. I love that. And then what's driving the interactivity here are these hotspots. So on the right here, we've got the state one, which again takes our car to the right. We got our neutral position, which is our default state. And then our left hotspot, which moves it to the left. And it's also shifting the rotation of this wheel, depending on which area you're hovering on. And then all the boost functionality, you can press anywhere within here in this hotspot, and it will boost your car off into the sunset. And then that cool day or night filter, Those are toggled on and off by these buttons right here. As you can see, there's some object states applied to each one of these to change it from day to night and back and forth. I love this one. I thought it was such a cool and creative way of utilizing object states and also taking motion graphics and, like I said, kind of leveling up their appearance in studio by creating cool transformations. All right. Next, we've got our last internally created showcase experience. This one I think is probably the most applicable in terms of like specific use cases that you could potentially envision your content taking on. So this is a case study experience. This one also is a template that you can import into your account from Ceros Inspire, but I really liked the way that this one handles data points and some cool transformations with object states, and kind of, like I said, more of like a real world kind of practical sense compared to the last two that were a little more fun and imaginative. So let's check this one out. And also, if you want to import this into your account, there's this edit button right here that'll drop it into your Ceros account. But right out of the gate, in this header section, we've got this gorgeous video, and we've got an object state applied to our Explore button just to give it a little bit more interactivity. So this is a color changing object state where we're taking the opacity from 0 and filling in with that nice kind of royal blue color on hover. But the things that I really wanted to focus on here are the data points. I love what they did here for the engagement and the interactivity for these different data points. So a couple of things you'll notice as I hover over each one of these circles, the circle itself, the backing frame moves its position depending on which one you're hovering on. So that, again, we're really kind of drawing your focus to each one of these data points, making it more immersive and engaging. And also the text within each one of these data points changes its color with an object state from black to white. And this is also coupled with show interactions, which reveals a corresponding text layer beneath each one of these data points. So it's a nice combination of show and hide interactivity and object states. And there's some more stuff down here that's pretty cool as well. We've got this problem solution kind of tab module built in. We've got more position object state changes. We've got another kind of tab rounded square shape that's moving to different positions based on where you hover in this little tab module. And then here at the bottom, we've got a toggle switch, which if you click on the solution side, it will show you the solution for that problem. This is also done with an object state, moving the position of the circle from one side to the other. So you're probably already noticing that there's a lot of familiarity and similarity between a lot of the things that we're showing so far. A lot of use cases that are just slightly different, but pretty much the same in execution in terms of changing the position, the rotation, and the color of a lot of these assets with your object states, but in just very different ways. Let's take a peek behind the hood for this one. And again, you could import the same exact template into your account and check it out. So let's begin with the data points right here. So there's 3 hotspots, one on each one of the data points. And there's a lot going on here, but it's actually not as crazy as it seems. So when you hover over each one of these hotspots, a couple things happen. One, it shows this corresponding copy right here beneath each one. There's a layer for each one of them in these folders. So copy 1, 2, and 3. And then the position of the circle shape, the backing frame, changes on hover. So there's, I believe, 3 states here. So for data point 1, 2, and 3. And again, these are all toggled by these different hotspots. We also have the text and the copy changing within each one of these different data points on hover. So it's changing from black to white, and that's just adjusting the fill color on each one of these states. And then also we have another interaction to show the, to hide the other text boxes that you're not currently interacting with. So these are the show and stay visible and hide and stay hidden interactions that are being activated on hover. So rather than clicking on each one of these data points to reveal the corresponding copy, you just hover over them and it does its thing. And then down here, we've got 3 different hotspots here in our tabs to toggle these different problem solution tabs. And then we've also got our rounded square shape right here, that blue guy, moving between different positions for each one of those states. So defaults all the way to the left, middle one was state 1, and all the way to the right for state 2. And pretty much the same thing is happening here with that position object state. Rather than moving this, we're moving this rounded square shape from that side to the right side from problem to solution with a position change object state. Love it. All right, everybody. Now I'd like to shine a spotlight on some of our amazing Ceros community members with a couple of contributions that I handpicked from creative challenges that were recently done. And also, little plug, if you want to see amazing work from our Ceros community, I would highly recommend checking out our monthly creative challenges, because so many cool submissions come through from power users like yourselves that really kind of push the envelope of what you can do with the platform. Thank you for that link, Liana. So yeah, definitely recommend checking those out. The first of these comes from Anna Karina. Last month, we did a challenge called Tis the Season, where the objective was to create a holiday themed experience. There were kind of very loose parameters and guidelines around the type of content that you create. As long as it was holiday themed and had some interactivity, you could kind of just let your creativity run wild. So some folks made event pages, some folks made invites, I should say. Some folks made in this case, guides for like recipes and whatnot. There was so many cool experiences that came through. You guys did a great job. But the one that really stuck out to me, probably because I'm such a sucker for Halloween, was Anna Karina's Spells Kitchen experience. And I think you guys are about to be blown away by the creativity that Anna Karina has on display here. So let's check this out. All right. So right away, we've got some cute little attention-seeking animations bouncing around our gourd and our pumpkin right here. We've got an object state right here on this Let's Go button, which is changing the color from kind of that darker green to this lighter green. And then when you click Let's Go, we've got some fun, spooky music playing, which you can toggle on and off with this little player here. These are also some object states changing the color of the player icons from green to white. I'm going to stop this music so you can hear me better. But throughout this entire experience, Anna Karina made a really great use of the audio extension SDK. There are so many sound effects everywhere. It's amazing. For instance, when you click on this little jar of eyeballs, you can hear a little pop noise as the eyeball drops into the cauldron. Yes, audio, Beth. Yeah, so using the our SDK, the audio extension, you can actually create sound effects on your interactions. But the really fun stuff with object states starts to come into play when you hover over and engage with each one of these recipe books, these spell books, if you will, on the right. So if you hover over each one, you'll notice that the brightness kicks up a notch on each one of the books that you're interacting with. And also there is a drop shadow that Anna Karina has placed around them to kind of illuminate them a little bit more. So it's not really a shadow, more of a glow, I would say, but it's technically a drop shadow in Studio around each one of these books, just to kind of give more emphasis on which recipe book you're about to open. And then check this out, y'all. When you click on one, it's like you're pulling the book out. There's a sound effect and the position changes of that book, and that's all done through object states, that position changing. Then here on the left, she's added some GIFs, and it might be some videos, but I think it's GIFs that are playing over top of the cauldron to kind of give you a sneak peek of what's in store for each one of these recipes. And then you can open up the recipe. Another sound. This is such a cool experience. More sound effects there. She lists all of the different recipes. There are multiple recipes for each book. So one's for desserts, evil drinks, main courses, and poisonous sweets. Just laughs at you, but so cool. Oh, I love this experience so much. It's such like I said, I feel like this really pushes the envelope of what you can do creatively in Ceros. I mean, again, so many Easter eggs everywhere. You hover over this pumpkin guy and there's a show interaction there to reveal a little spooky face. If you hover over this little potion, a little frog pops out. There's some eyes on the gourd back here. You can hover over this cat and he opens his eye. I mean, just so much interactivity and fun use of animations and object states in this experience. Incredible job, Anna Crana. You continue to impress us with your contributions. All right, gang, we got one more to go. And this also comes from our community member community, this time from Meg Mary. So she also does a lot of incredible stuff with our creative challenges. The thing that first drew my attention to her contributions was a Legend of Zelda Wind Waker piece that she made for our Nerd Out challenge. I'm a gigantic video game nerd, so I was like, oh yeah, this is incredible. But oftentimes we see a lot of experiences that use some sort of a timeline functionality to various different extents of interactivity. And I thought what Meg did here with her Ludwig van Beethoven experience was a great use of object states and just kind of a really great setup for a timeline. So I wanted to show this one because I do know that there are some folks out there that do build timeline experiences. So Meg, thanks for your contribution. Let's check out Beethoven's life. Amazing. So when you click on each one of these different moments in his life, a couple things happen. This little circle indicator on which year in an event you're interacting with moves down. So this is a position object state change. Also, the date and the event becomes more bright when you hover over each one. So we're changing the color or the brightness of each one of these layers with object states. And also, check this out. When you click on each one of these different dates, there is an object state or several object states applied to a really long image that Meg brought in that focuses on that specific date with many different position object state changes. So this is one long graphic that Meg put in, and she's shifting it around with its position with these click object state triggers. So there's several different ones here that you can interact with. And it's a little bit more noticeable when you go from the first to the last date, but we're basically just changing the position of this timeline graphic in this mask shape with object states. But I thought this was such a cool way to do a timeline because oftentimes folks do timelines more horizontally. And I like the more kind of vertical approach here because it allows you to add a lot more information, a lot more dates. And she left a perfect amount of space here for descriptions and text and other images to accompany these different events and dates. Such a cool experience. And nice little fade in and fade out animations to kind of transition between the different events. Yeah, I love this one. This is probably my favorite timeline experience I've ever seen, honestly. I'm a little biased because I love our community members so much, but this is such a cool one. I think, again, great use of object states, great use of bringing in external assets, kind of like what we talked about with the arcade game one, where you're really kind of leveling up the assets that you designed outside of Studio and enhancing them in really cool ways that really kind of transform them uniquely. But again, such a cool experience. Awesome. All right, everybody. So that is the last experience in our showcase today. I do see some questions popping up in the chat. So I will do my best to address those now. All right, starting with Krista's, will you show us how she did that scroll to change date? Really unique and cool. Yeah, so there was a couple things there. I'm not going to open up this experience in Studio because I don't want to break apart Meg's experience on the back end. But basically what we're doing here is there is multiple different hotspots laid out on all of these different dates. And when you click on one of them, it illuminates that specific year and corresponding event text layers. Those are both, I would assume, changing the color or the brightness on those on click. And it's also changing the position of this circle shape, kind of like what we saw with a few of those other experiences where state by state, we're just changing the position gradually down this entire timeline. And these are all being activated with click triggers, as is the date here in our circle mask. So rather than all of these separate layers, this is just one giant layer that is masked within a circle shape, but it has multiple different states that are triggered by these hotspots. So again, one long graphic and a mask that changes its position based on where you're clicking on this timeline. Fantastic. And yeah, we can definitely reach out to Meg and Anna Karina if they'd be willing to make these templates that you guys can use on the community, because I agree, these are incredible pieces that I would love for everyone to be able to utilize if they're game for that. Cool. Any other questions? There might be one further up that I missed. I saw that Liana shared my link to the audio extension webinar I did a while back. That's a great thing to check out if you liked the sound effects that Anna Karina added in her experience. Definitely check that out. It does take a little bit of time to get up and running in an experience, but I think it's really, really cool. Brian asks, can you demonstrate a simple position state change? Sure, I'd be happy to. Let me jump back into one of the experiences. Actually, I'll do it on this one right here. But I'll just do this on a separate page of this experience just so you can see on a very, very basic level how to change positions on an object state. So I'm just going to make a totally new page right here. And I'll do this with a circle to kind of mimic how the case study experience looked. How's that? I'll change this to blue again to kind of mimic what we had going on originally. And basically, whenever you create an object state on any asset in an experience, you want to first select that asset that you want to change the state on. You'll then, in the design tab here where it says states, click this plus icon. Your default state will be what this object looks like initially to your viewers. And since I want to give a nice fluid motion as it transforms to my other position states, I'm going to add a transition here. This could be lengthened or shortened depending on how far I'm changing the position of that state. I'm just going to leave it as its default duration for now, but you could bump this up to 1, 2, 3 seconds, depending on how long you want it to take to get from the default state or another state to the state that you have set up here. Then in the drop-down menu, I'm going to create a new state that I'll call position 1. Add a transition there. And in this case, I'm going to move this. I'll move this to the center of my canvas right here. Actually, I'm going to make sure that, okay, we're good. So yeah, so now I've created a state where when triggered, it'll move my circle from its default position right here to the middle position, like so. And then I could trigger this in a couple different ways. I could create a button for this. I could create a hotspot over top of that object. I could also use an interaction state, depending on what the transformation is, to apply the state change interaction directly to the asset. There's a number of different ways that you could trigger an object state. But what I'll do is I'll create a hotspot over top of this circle right here, and I'll apply my object state change to it, and we'll activate this with a click. So on click, I'm adding an interaction to this hotspot to change the target state of my circle shape to position 1, like so. Click Save Interaction. And then when I go to my preview, I can click on this, and then it moves. And I could also set up an interaction to take it back to my default position if I wanted to, but this just got us to that center position. So I know it was really quick. You are always welcome to reach out to the Educate team in design help in the community, or in product questions. You could also let your account manager know that you want to have an advanced training on object states. We're happy to get any sort of session like that set up for you if there's something specific with object states that you want to explore further. You're welcome, Brian. Oh, sorry, Gene. I didn't see that question from you earlier. Yes, we can absolutely look into seeing if we can make that Hot 10 experience a template, because I agree that'd be another really cool one to have on hand. Awesome. Well, gang, I hope that this was inspiring for you all. Before we wrap up, are there any last questions on something that you saw or anything related to object states or interactivity in general that I can answer? Okay. Well, we will be sharing. Yeah, absolutely, Beth. So we will be sharing this recording of this webinar to everyone that registered. We'll also have it on our recorded webinars section on Educate. We'll also be sharing this deck if you want to take a closer look at Anna and Meg's amazing experiences. And like I said earlier, I would love for you guys to join our creative challenges to check out more inspiring creations down the road. So until next time, thank you everybody for coming out to today's showcase webinar. We hope to see you soon on an upcoming one. Make sure to check out educate.ceros.com for guides, videos, and upcoming webinars. From all of us here on the Ceros Educate team, we appreciate your viewership and we hope to see you soon. Take care, everybody.